Thank you for coming to the subcommittee meeting today. This is around student teaching for 2020-2021. During our last meeting on September 10th, 2020, Dr. Tom Tomberlin, he introduced this item to have a discussion amongst the commission about the student teaching placement for this year, because EPPs have been having trouble placing their student teacher candidates in LEAs, which affects the teacher pipeline. He stated that the LEAs are concerned about supporting the student teachers in a remote environment, and also the additional burden this could place on cooperating teachers who are trying to provide the high quality instruction under remote conditions. And so several of our discussion points, and I'm just going to note a few, and then I can share the screen with everyone what I took from this past meeting, the minutes, so that we can start off the discussion this morning. One of the discussion items was about having a common MOU template, or a template that the partners would agree on updating those MOUs. Another area is from the EPPs, having small group instruction as part of what the student observe and then teach around for EdTPA instead of an entire group. And then also convening this whole subcommittee was one of the points that Chairman Miller actually brought up because of some of these issues. And then Mrs. Maureen Stover, she talked about blue teachers, and that these teachers might be less inclined to take on a student teacher in remote conditions because and impact their student growth data, their EBOS data. So that's just a few of the discussion items from last time. And so we have put together the subcommittee, and we wanted to open up the floor to any other discussion items, and I will share these notes that I had from the last meeting.
So how long will it, I mean, the MOU is going to take a while, right? Like the statewide MOU. It's a great idea. I actually had sent it forth as an agenda item as well, separately, because I feel like it's something that's needed. Everybody needs a structured MOU, but I don't know that that's going to help us this year unless someone has an MOU that they're using that they could just share that puts in all the COVID stuff, right? Like the videotaping of the EdTPA, or could there be some addendums to an MOU that are created centrally that might be helpful for 2020, 2021? Mainly around video recording, which I think Aaron said that their attorney had some issues around that. I think it was Aaron. And maybe that's what we focus on, not the whole MOU, but just that component, and see what school districts have done, maybe Glenda School District and then maybe Aaron School District. And it could be like an addendum. Ben, what do you think of that?
I think yes, in general. I think we should be intentional about what are the parts of the MOU that are common, and I think they should be limited. And then what are the parts that people have to build in, because having a partnership with Wake County is very different from doing it with Greene County. And right. So the MOU should have a core set of conditions, and then the part EPP and the partners build around that. Just to be respectful of the variation in situations around the state. There's also an underlying dynamic, given some of the concerns around things like if the district sees having interns as detrimental, the district could just decide, well, we're not going to partner with that county, partner with that EPP. And in theory, an EPP might not be able to find a partner. Is there going to be any condition that compels are we willing to go there? That we would compel districts to partner, and that's a troublesome strategy. But what happens? I heard, if I'm remembering correctly from the meeting, some EPPs that as many as 40% of their interns were not placed.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Andrew. One of the I think it was ECU and Vivian Covington. I think they were at 30% that were not placed. But because they're such an enormous institution and covers such an such an area that is not well covered by other institutions, that is certainly problematic. I think UNCG might have also been one that was challenged as well.
And the privates, we're probably have 10% left. I don't know what the number is this morning. In some areas too, right? So like we're having a harder time with our placement for our special ed candidates than we are for our, our elementary candidates, so to say.
What did they do? What?
Keep calling. It's hard. I think it's brought up a really interesting dynamic for the state, right? Like it's a teacher pipeline issue, right? Like we need our interns, student teachers / PACE because of a teacher pipeline issue, but there's no accountability on the LEA side to do so. So, I wonder if this is a time where we need to have a conversation, whoever the royal we are, have a conversation with the superintendent's organization for the state or at a superintendent meeting for the state, because I feel that the lack of partnership sometimes around that is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that in our case, for example, and this is, of course, a one-dimension conversation, is that, this has taken super extra work this year because there's been one-on-one conversations with teachers. Like, can you handle it capacity-wise? Sometimes you don't get past the principal, and sometimes you just can't get past the teacher. Then I just can't. I can't do it right now because they just have too much on them. So,
yeah, I agree. We're because of the hard work our team has done at the field and clinical level. We have 100% of our interns placed. Looks like we're in a place now where everyone can complete EdTPA, and we are expecting EdTPA to be completed.
right.
Now that, we don't, New Hanover County meets tonight. I'm sure they're addressing the Plan A provision, but, the vast majority of our students are in New Hanover County, but we're in about 24 school districts around the state, but we've been able to get them placed.
Yeah. So Vivian just wrote and said that they're down to 33 not placed out of 352, so a little bit less than 10%. But they're very hard because they're secondary and special ed, and just again, given the challenges of the clinical teachers in those areas, that it's hard. Those are hard placements. I think special ed is I'm pretty different, especially given there's if it's remote, it's just very difficult. They're remoting in to help another teacher, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's as of today, Andrew. So what's our strategy going to be to get these school districts on board to long-term be committed to taking student teachers / interns?
So this is Tom. Can we back up just a second? Andrew, do we have any some overall survey data from publics and independent institutions about what this is looking like in other places? I know we have a couple of EPPs reporting, but do we have a kind of a canvas of all the ed prep programs across the state?
Yeah, we do. Let me just disappear for a minute and pull that stuff up.
So I think that's a good place to start here is, you know, if we're going to not make a policy recommendation to the board, but just alert the board out of this from PEPSC that this is an issue that's affecting EPPs and school districts across the state. How, you know, how can we find a sensible path forward? The problem with the MOU, or, you know, Van, I take your recommendation of forcing LEAs to take student teachers with a grain of salt. I mean, we all know how problematic that would be.
Yeah, I don't want to go there.
But even you know, even getting the districts to agree to take them, we still have this other issue that Maureen surfaced with the best and brightest don't want to be saddled with this responsibility because of the potential impact on their own status. And we've got to find a way to get around this. I mean, because these are exactly the teachers we want mentoring and cooperating with our student teachers.
Right.
If they're coming into the profession with a poor model for teaching, then they're likely to follow that model. I don't know.
Well, Tom, yes, we have to find some way other than coercion or you're locked into an MOU. And I think there are ways to incentivize is the wrong word. We want to see it as mutually beneficial. It's clearly good for the EPPs. I mean, they have to do this to be able to operate the programs. But what is the benefit to the district? And we could probably lay out several. And you know, some of that's sort of your first step in recruitment. You're able to help, you know, grow your own in some cases where people live in the district or near the district. I always there is financial incentive. I think part of what may come out of this is the realization that we can't expect partners to do this out of their hide. And we simply are not compensating. We don't have the structures in the EPPs. So in our case, we've got 3 people doing the work of 6 in a COVID world. And we got to do something that makes it professionally rewarding on the K-12 side. It isn't just about we're going to have teachers. How is the K-12 side benefiting from this? And some of that's financial.
Yeah.
I don't disagree that a piece of it is financial, and
we have stipends that go out to the teachers. I'm sure most places probably do. It's probably not commensurate with the value of the teacher or other educators' expertise and time. Well, no, it's not. It's not a matter of probably. It is not. It is not commensurate with the value of their time. That's historical. I mean, that isn't something that happened in the last, 7 or 8 years. That's historical.
I mean, here's like a really super random ambolic idea. Is there any way that blue teachers, there would be no penalty to the school if they and they're testing if they had a student teacher in that classroom?
So there's no way for me to essentially hold them harmless on their EVOS for the following year. That's problematic on a lot of levels. But I'm wondering, so I guess what I'm wondering is if our general implementation model may be what's causing some of the problem. So like, and I have a very unsophisticated perception of how student teachers are working with the cooperating teachers. In many ways, I feel like they're coming in and they're just like, there may be a week or two of kind of preparation, and then basically the class is handed over to the student teacher, and the cooperating teacher just kind of gives feedback at the end, or kind of redirects, or whatever he or she might be doing. Maybe if there's a way we could make that model more cooperative, so the highly effective teacher doesn't feel like he or she's just kind of handing over the reins to somebody else. And it's a more collaborative experience than what my perception is. Now, I could be wrong about what's actually happening in the classroom. I'm not entirely sure.
So I think it's all over the place, right? Like some places, like in some EPPs, there's a gradual release to the student teacher, and then it's a gradual release back to the clinical teacher, right? So kind of like it goes across that. And other places, like at East Carolina and some other EPPs, they use co-teaching, right? So the teacher, the student teacher might be the lead teacher, but the clinical teacher has not left the room, and they're actually teaching together. And it would be interesting to know from the institutions in the state that use co-teaching, is that a model that they've had less problems placing in, because you're never really giving up you're still in the midst in terms of planning and things like that, except that the lead teacher becomes the student teacher and back and forth, or intern. And then, other places it's year-long residency, so you're the teacher of record. So I would say there's a wide variety of models that are being used in EPPs, and I don't know if it's. I know that there was a time, say in Greene County, that when I was at ECU, we went to co-teaching, that they were more than willing to take our interns because it was a co-teaching environment and everyone was trained in that. So that was a positive at that point. So you may be onto something, Tom. It may be time to move to a different, to spread that model further.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because the problem with the cooperating teachers that we've got is we've got this mandate that they be of a certain quality, but it seems, I mean, if the pushback from Marine is really kind of what's going on out there, it seems that the perception among teachers is that this is just, I'm just kind of handing over my my EVOS to somebody who's inexperienced, and that can have some real impact on this, on my situation. And I mean, that might be one of the recommendations that we really look at, is there a better way to do this? Now, I have to admit that my perception is based on what I saw 20 years ago when I was teaching, and saw I remember walking into the lounge on my planning period, and there were like 4 teachers in there. I'm like, what are y'all doing? And they were like, oh, we have student teachers. I was like, oh, okay. So my perception may be very, very skewed about and anachronistic, but if there's places where we could possibly shore something up there, that would be really helpful, I think.
This is Andrew. So 2 things. One is I sent to Kim, so she forwarded out to you the initial data that I got from Laura over at GA, and I'm still waiting on data from the privates from Tom. But second, and I think this is important for this group to think about, is, and it may be, it is related, but it may be secondary to what we're tasked with right now. But I do believe, in my work with beginning teacher support and mentoring around the country in my previous life, one of the places where programs fall over is what kind of training, support, and resources and standardization of expectations is going on at the cooperating teacher level. So what you just said there, Tom, I think is really telling, and it's pervasive across the whole country, which is that, you may have somebody who's an excellent mentor, a cooperating teacher, and you may have a total dud. And everything in between. And because there's no standardization or expectations of those folks, I think that you run the gamut there, which could be problematic for creating high quality folks through their student teaching experience. So that may be something that we should explore. I don't know if there's policy implications there or standards or expectations of the cooperating teacher. But I think that's the kind of thing that should be looked at. That is a weak link in the process of training teachers, I think.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Kim. Is there any way for these blue teachers, for the ones that are taking student teachers on, is there any way to ask them why they take them on? To then know reasons behind why certain blue teachers do and maybe others don't.
Yeah, I think I mean, potentially there is, but.
And maybe Maureen knows, maybe she's had a student teacher and she could tell us why too, because obviously she was a blue teacher.
Right. Well, she made it clear what her position is. What we don't know is whether that's a prevailing opinion across the state, or I mean, I think even EPPs would be rather blind to this because, at the higher level, they're not seeing the negotiations that are going on within the LEA about who's going to take on a student teacher. What's that process look like? Is it just a general, hey, we've got 15 student teachers coming in from ECU, who wants one? Or is it a more deliberate approach to matching teachers with teachers with a certain skill set, and or matching them on licensure areas, matching them on characteristics of the teacher, of the clinical teacher. I don't know what's going on there. I have no idea.
Tom, in our case at UNCW and with our partners, and New Hanover County is overwhelmingly the largest partner. Because of the structure of the partnership, we do have that, probably at a high level, but we have feedback and information. The piece that tends to cause the most friction for us is when somebody suggests that the intern should evaluate the host teacher. That tends to cause the most friction when that issue's on the table. But we have had situations at UNCW in recent years where we, for instance, put in place an MAT program, and the feedback from the teachers was incredibly negative. They said these people are coming in classrooms and they are not ready to do this. And so we revised the program. We worked with the districts. We revised the program to make it stronger. So I think if you look across different EPPs, you're going to see different levels of how recursive is that assessment process. So both sides are engaged, and ultimately the program gets better. The interns get better. That's probably, I would guess, Ann, that's extremely uneven.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, yes, I'll just say yes to that.
So, I think we're a little bit hampered by the fact that we don't have anybody from the LEAs on this call, because I think they could offer a lot of insight to this. Now, I don't know, but my personal opinion, what I know about how Glenda functions is that they do it pretty well in Cabarrus County. I don't know, some other kind of inputs on this would be really interesting to understand what's going on. even if we could persuade Maureen to marshal her regional teachers of the year, maybe we could get a much better sense of the kind of differences across at least regions in this regard. How are the, then at least we've got 7 other teachers of the year that are weighing in on how they've seen the process manifest itself in the LEAs, to give us a better sense of what's the kind of modal implementation of this across the state. I just feel like there's so many unknowns right now, that we need to get at the root causes of what's at play here. And right now we've got a bunch of symptoms, but we don't know the causes of those problems.
Well, I can give you a general overview of pretty much how it works everywhere. Is you have a central office contact. So you have somebody from central office that you work through, and from there it goes to principals. Some people work directly with principals, being on the sides of the EPP, and then the principals determine if, based off the list of eligible teachers, what teachers they were going to ask to take student teachers, for example. I say that's a pretty common process, I would think, across the state. Central office to principal, principal to teacher. And sometimes the principal will say, I'm going to work it out. And sometimes they'll say, I need to ask the teachers. And is that pretty consistent with what y'all do?
Yes, we have site contacts, key contacts at the site and in the district. Pretty much the way Ann explained it. It's a little bit when you get out into online programs and you're dealing, the relationships we have with the 12 districts in southeastern North Carolina is permanent. I mean, it's ongoing. It's been the case for 30 years. It's when we get out into online programs and we might be working with Vance County and we've never had an intern or a student in Vance County before. We've got to have some basics of a relationship so that person can complete the program, and Vance County will partner and do things they're expected to do. I mean, that is the brave new world we're in, and we talk about that a lot at UNCW, that the way we philosophically define a partnership should be the knitting we stick to. But what happens when the partner is Currituck or Vance or Cherokee? We've had interns in Cherokee County, and by the way, school administration students. And the analogy I use with our folks is to put them in Cherokee County is the equivalent of putting them in Atlanta. Would we put interns in Atlanta? And the answer to that is almost absurdly no. We would never go partner. They're all it's out of state. But the distance is the primary thing. So there are a lot of sort of fundamental issues like that. And Tom, I would not short circuit, but face reality that's been in place my 30 years in teacher education. When we open the conversation that you just talked about, we get into 2 pathways. One is the EPPs having concerns about the quality of the teachers and the schools in which they are placing them, and the school is the problem. On the school side, it's these interns are not ready. You're sending us people that don't know how to teach. We can do this one more time, but there's probably 50 years of research about how that relationship breaks down. And there's parallel research about what it looks like when it works. But I fear that if we open that conversation up, if we do it the way it's always been done, we're going to learn the things we've always known. So we got to cue it up differently. Did that make any sense, Tom?
Yeah, it absolutely does. The problem is the problem from our perspective at DPI is this is not running as a program. This is running as just kind of something that needs to happen. There's just no, there's no guidelines and there's no parameters and there's nobody kind of watching to make sure that things are happening and in the way we need them to.
And Tom, I know we're being recorded, so I'm saying this for the sake of the public conversation. What we're talking about right now is why some of the out-of-state programs that we're approving as a state are highly problematic from my point of view. So I've been texting while we're having this conversation with our professional development system director and our director of field and clinical placement. So asking questions help me understand some of the nuances of this. And I asked the question about, do we have situations where the school or district looks back and says your interns are not ready? And the answer in 30 seconds was, yes, we have those situations, but we sit down with the partners and we work out what those competency issues are and how can we address them collaboratively. So we do that with the partner. When we have EPPs that are institutionally structured so they don't have that kind of intimacy with the partners, I just think it's highly problematic. And to the point of it is a significant quality issue. And you know, in our own case at UNCW, we came to the determination in elementary education a couple of years ago, we could not be in every school district in North Carolina because we don't have the resources to do it well. So we pulled that map way back and basically focused east of I-95 and down in the southeastern region. And we will selectively partner with districts outside of that. But this idea that you can be anywhere for everybody doing anything is destroying the teaching, the preparation of teachers, because it is stretching too thin. And it's my concern about some of the providers that get approved by the state board. They're not meeting the same standard of practice that I think is essential in this kind of question.
I think that's true, and I think the kind of remote placement that we see happening. I mean, it has to happen to some degree, but I think it should be the exception and not the rule. So all of you take students from all over the state, and then when this time comes to kind of place them in their student teaching, the student naturally wants to go back to wherever he or she came from. And that puts you in a really difficult situation of not having, the relationship with those districts to understand how, what their needs are, or their context is for, bringing in teachers ready to kind of manage a classroom from day one.
Yeah, I'll also say, and Ann, I'm going to say something and see if it rings true for you. In many ways, solving the long-term problem is a whole lot easier than solving the problem. I mean, if we're committed to doing this as a state, and we really want a robust professional pathway, we can build that. Now, it's going to take some resources, but we can build that. And I can see it as plain as I can see anything. The next 12 months, how do we help EPPs that can't get their interns placed, don't have an infrastructure for the interns to be able to complete Ed TPA, and do some of the other things that need to happen between now and next May? If they're not already there, that is a huge challenge. And I mean, it almost makes me nervous to think about EPPs being in that situation.
So, yeah, I'll go back to I think the long-term play is super, I agree completely, Van. The long-term play is super important for us to think about. And I think this has brought it more to light, right? And I think there should be also a piece for if EPPs aren't performing dashboard wise like they should, at least at a minimal level, then they need to improve. And I don't blame a school district for not wanting to take those particular students. But what we have found this time is institutions that have great relationships, great partnerships, have produced a quality candidate overall are still having problems, right? So I think we need a little bit of PR that happens immediately. And that's why I'll go back to my comments about, do we need to reach out? Do we need to write something for the News and Observer? Do we need to reach out to the superintendent's organization? What do we need to do right now that can be just a little bit of PR to help districts, to help a superintendent who's got 5 million things on his or her mind say, oh, yeah, we definitely need these student teachers. Like, what can we do to help here? Right? To ask the question. We need someone to ask the question internally, because it's not just this semester, it's going to be next semester, right? It's not going to be next semester, it's going to be the following fall, because they're going to be exhausted from this year. So this isn't going to go away in December. The second thing is that I hope we're going to get time to also talk about some PR around the EdTPA and about the small groups that are allowed for passing of EdTPA, the size of groups. I think we need some PR around that. Or a statement, whatever y'all want to call it. I'm just calling it PR in general. A statement around that. And also the fact that if we allow them to do this in their student teaching and they get it done using appropriate parameters, that is one thing off the checklist for them when they go out. And it's a huge thing that the district doesn't, again, in a year and a half, have to do the lift for, or not remove someone because they didn't get around to it. So I'd like for us to talk about who could we get on our side to help us just nudge a little bit these conversations that need to happen now, and then the long play can come back.
Yeah.
Long answer, Van, sorry.
No, I appreciate that, Ann, and want to add maybe a couple of strategy pieces to it. Back in the spring, the General Assembly, I think, rather substantially increased the funding for the new teacher support, the new teacher coaches in that system, and UNCW participates in that. So, and I think that was an incredibly important move, because in this next 9 months, their institutions and their partner districts are just going to have to deal with some issues where they don't have a solution. For example, I am concerned about the level of anxiety and stress that we're creating for our interns, because we're saying we believe the best professional decision is to go ahead and commit to doing EdTPA under the current circumstances, because number one, you will do well. I mean, anticipate that you will be successful. But if you're not, we're going to be able to have some support systems in place to help you. Once you get out into the districts, they aren't built to support EdTPA
Right.
the same way universities are. So if we looked at that 9 month, the group that graduated in the spring, the ones for this fall and the ones for next spring, what if we built parallel systems? One is what we're doing with the new teacher coaches, and two is what we're doing with the EdTPA, with the EPPs and their partners to resource that transition for the current, the interns that are going to struggle, and the districts that are going to say, we're anxious enough, and for EPPs that are going to say, we got to do the best we can with that TPA, because that's the best option among a list of not so good options.
Yeah.
So I think if we can, and I don't know how much Craig Horn was singularly instrumental in the new teacher decision the General Assembly made, but if they could pair new teachers with the EPPs and their partners, we could probably do some pretty impactful work in the next 9 to 18 months for the group that's coming out now that are not going to be, they're going to have faced some challenges and struggles getting through their program because of COVID.
So, Van, are you saying that even if the new teacher support, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but listen, hear me out here. If you're saying that new teacher support is, which is still run out of ECU, right? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's, publics do that. So if you're saying, are you saying that new teacher support coaches, like through PAT, might hold some statewide support sessions? I'm talking logistics now. That even if you're not in new teacher support, that you might provide some sessions and some support to support teachers all over the state that have this outstanding requirement?
Yeah.
Would you see that look? I'm sorry, I'm in the nitty gritty.
Yeah, well, good, because I think we can get there. Because my anxiety right now is over the short term. Long term, we can paint that. is that what's already happening with the new teachers, the new teacher support system that I understand got some additional funding. It's being expanded. And the reason that was done was knowing that they were going to have to do some things for the first year teachers this year because of the problems we had back in the spring. So if we couple that with an EPP and partnership-based short-term strategy, particularly around EdTPA, and ensuring that their level of practice is as high as it can be, given the COVID challenges, if we could do that with people who've already graduated, because our partnership does beginning teacher support. If we built that, we have this university system that's got how many institutions in the state, public and private, that if we tapped into their ability to partner, funded it for the people who are interns now, interns in the spring, and people who graduated this past May and went out into schools. If we linked those two things together, it's a pretty powerful short-term support system for what's happening right now. And it could become part of a long-term system. But Ann,
I agree with that. And
I'm going to mute myself.
Don't mute yourself. Tommy, are you just thinking? What are you thinking? Or is that the end of your sentence?
no, I think that's a great idea if we could get it funded. I mean, that new teacher support program, what is that? $2,000 per candidate to the LEAs?
To the coach, basically, with some operational, but the districts have to pay that.
That's right. So that's, to get that done at scale would require appropriation that would cover those costs, which for the state would, I think is feasible. The problem for the LEAs is, so Wake County can probably afford this, or another one of the big 12, but outside of that, district's going to have a really tough time justifying that cost. When you look at somebody like, let's just take Hope County, for example, who's got an incredible beginning teacher support program, but their concern about maintaining it is that they're basically just preparing teachers to go teach in Wake County. So they're losing their investment because once the teacher's done with going through that program, they become eminently attractive to Wake County, and they pick them up, and get them a higher.
I guess I'm wondering if there's some way. I am not in charge of new teacher support, obviously. I wonder if there's some way to do something in the middle, like what I was talking about, Van. I mean, I think the long play is that, right? Like the partner, the EPP to the new teacher support. I mean, that was the vision all along, to have new teacher support all over the state for every teacher, right? I mean, that's the long-term play for them. I'm wondering if we could do something in the middle where they do provide some support for these teachers that are trying to get through this first year, and that just becomes part of their model, even if it's in a remote way.
So I have let me intercede here. I'm thinking a couple of institutions have reached out to me about this concern of folks that leave the nest that is the EPP and then are left out in the wild the next year or two or three, and the EPP doesn't have them under their wing, and they still are obligated to take those tests and pass that EdTPA or PPAT. And it's a good question. So the question is, how, what are the LEAs doing towards that support? And when I think of immediate next steps, like is there something we could put in place that would shore up the immediate short term? It could be development of resources and or training of the regional folks that the state deploys to do regional support around, in their various jurisdictions. One of which is the regional education facilitator, who is directly responsible for beginning teacher support. If we could standardize what Anne, what you were mentioning earlier about, here's the commentary around EdTPA. You don't have to have 300 people in your class. You can only have you only need a couple. Here's here's a white paper, 1 page on what needs to be in place for you to be successful, and then some guidance to standardize the messaging at the regional level with all those refs, as well as the regional teams, because it's not just the refs. It could be these other folks that are a part of these regional gatherings as well. That may be a really useful measure for driving the work and also improving the supports at the LEA level for folks who have left the nest that is the EPP.
I wonder too if they could, either new teacher support or that group could, I mean, and this is more brainstorming, right? It could also just have the EPPs could designate a contact person, right? Like to help. I'm glad my faculty's not listening to this.
You mean a contact person in the district?
Or the contact person in the EPP. So you kind of have so let's just take EdTPA for example. You have someone from UCW, somebody from Elon, somebody from here, there, wherever, and they could be called on to, do a session or two. So the burden's not just on one person, but they kind of provide some support to come in and do some things that they do off the top of their head anyway that they've learned to do. But yeah, to help so that we don't get off on the wrong path and have someone doing these things that aren't in the work like we are. But I don't mean UNCW do 24 sessions. I mean, UNCW point person do 2 sessions. Elon person does 2 sessions, like that. Or pull in the National Academy members in the state, right? There's quite a few National Academy members in the state to help. At Pearson National Academy, Stanford National Academy. So I'm way into brainstorming the logistics of this, but bottom line, Van, I agree, Andrew, Tom, that we need to do something for the next 18 months to 2 years to help these teachers, to retain them in the classroom, and to help them get through their requirements if they don't get it in the first round.
Right.
As an EPP collective, not as just Elon or just whomever.
Yes, and I'm confident we're making the right decision about EdTPA. They do it before. I'm confident about that. But if I knew that the resources were available in the districts, or we had the resources to follow them post program completion, then I might feel like there was more flexibility around the EdTPA decision. Also, keep in mind, every single one of the students who is not going to complete an internship, ultimately get a degree from their institution, is going to be first in line on clinical residency.
Right.
And they're right back into this cycle of the things that they have to do. And to the extent EdTPA is the critical issue, the institutions of higher education are better positioned than anybody in the state to help them. And then the second thing is, if the colleges and universities, public and private, have even some minimal resources to partner with the new teacher coaches, it's going to make that a more robust infrastructure.
I totally think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's not cheap, but it's also not, hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's doable. But what's going to happen if we don't is we're going to lose a significant number of those new teachers over the next 2 years. Yeah. And the last estimate I saw is every time a district loses a teacher is an additional $12,000 in cost. So we can pay it on the front end or pay it on the back end.
So I think from the district perspective, though, the pain on the front end or the back end, you know, they would need a lot more assurance that doing this on the front end, or that investment on the front end, would, you know, would have an impact on that back end cost. Right now, they're responding to the fact that they've, you know, that this teacher's gone and they have to replace it, and so they spend that money. But with this, you know, what if they invest on the front end and they still have those you know, personnel losses that they've got to then still spend. So I guess their concern is, are we going to get it on both ends?
Hopefully. You mean the support, Tom?
No, I mean the costs.
Oh.
So if I'm investing in this, you know, in this support by the new teachers program, they're going to help my student, you know, these folks pass the EdTPA. They're going to ensure, you know, high quality student teaching's going on. But then I still lose the teacher. So then I have to make that same $12,000 investment to replace that teacher, even though I've done this stuff in advance.
Well, hopefully there will be fewer of them. That they're still going to have some situations where that happens, but we will reduce the likelihood of that happening. I do know Ann made somebody used the Wake County analogy earlier. Our fundamental problem we run into in southeastern North Carolina is the districts want to do new teacher. They don't have the funding. And so what ends up happening is the poorest districts that have the hardest time retaining teachers are the ones least likely to be able to use the state's mechanisms to keep them. And if there's not some subsidizing of this by the state, Columbus County, Pender County, Clinton City, Sampson, those counties down here, they don't have a chance. They're asking the university, can we help fund the coach so that they can have some number of teachers? Or what we end up doing, this other crazy thing, which is we have some teachers in Onslow and some teachers in Pender and some teachers in Columbus, and we're putting them all together in a pool, and they're working with UNCW and they're working with Fayetteville State. And it's a strange conglomeration created by the lack of funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so we're multi-district partnering now and multi-university partnering so that districts have access to new teacher support. And we do not have the resources to do that at UNCW, but we do it anyway.
Very creative, Ann.
Well, that's Pat and folks in the new teacher team, you know, helping to figure those things out. But you know, Summer Lewis, who's our PDS director,
Yeah.
among many things, is wearing her out. It's exhausting to put this jigsaw puzzle together. Because you're trying to help a district, we're trying to help Columbus County get 4 teachers into a cohort.
Yeah. Summer's great. It's a problem.
So,
It is hard to say no because you feel for those folks.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
And they're partners.
Yeah. Right. They're good to y'all.
so Tom, I know you and I talked a little bit ago, maybe a week ago, about is it possible to get on the docket for the next superintendent's meeting to talk and gather their perspective? I don't know where we're at with that process. Have you made any progress on that?
I have not. I don't know when the next. So David Stegall and Bev Emery have a kind. I think it's about a monthly check-in with the superintendents where we hear their concerns, and most of this has been COVID-related issues. So it's hard to kind of elevate something like this because right now they're all trying to figure out, you know, how much COVID money am I going to get, and how am I going to be held harmless for my ADM, and and this is a little more.
How about HR folks? That's like the main contact typically.
Yeah, I think HR folks could be very helpful in this. We've got a what we call the teacher recruitment and retention task force meeting coming up. Is it next week, Kim?
It's the 30th. Yes.
Yeah. And that we already have this on the agenda to discuss with them. Is that correct, Kim?
I believe so.
Yeah. So we really want to get their perspective of what's going on out there and how
Yes.
well managed this their processes are on, you know, on making these placements and the kinds of support that folks have.
Yeah. And Tom, I don't, maybe as part of number one, the superintendents are going to convene the principals and ask them. So having the principal, I mean, if there's a way to tap into the principals association as well, because particularly in big districts, superintendents are going to go to the principal meeting and say, explain to me what this means.
There's also a few superintendents during the task force meeting too.
So there's three, right? There's the HR, there's superintendents, and there's principals. So what kind of communication can, or who can get in front of those groups in some way?
So one of my one thing that I'm thinking is perhaps it's not the right venue to elevate this in the superintendent's call that I have with David and Bev. Patrick Miller may be our better resource here in bringing this up at like NCASA and really getting some just making folks aware of the issue.
Yeah, I think this is an awareness thing.
Yeah, and equipping him with some numbers and some understandings. Like we need to show how, you know, this is a problem now, but I feel like it's a problem. It's a long-term problem because if teachers are going into these situations and they're not having good experiences in the student teaching and not feeling prepared, and then they get into the classroom setting, you know, then they get their own classroom and it's not successful, you know, that's just a recipe for just walking away from teaching, and it's a retention issue as well. And I'm wondering if we can put together some information, you know, to show one, how vital this is for these teachers in terms of their effectiveness, there's, you know, even their short-term effectiveness and their persistence in the profession.
Tom, in a group that you might be able to get some quick access information is they're called AdFeds. They are the field and clinical directors for the institutions.
Yeah.
And they got a pretty robust organization. They communicate well, and they may be able to help stitch. So they're out there interacting with site leaders and principals, and so they're talking to all the people we're talking about in this list. And maybe a 30-minute call with them. And I mean, they're one of the most robust groups in educator preparation in North Carolina.
They're public only, but they're very connected, and they're all the folks across the state that in public institutions that do placements, among other things.
Right.
And all other duties assigned. So that group has a email thing. That's a really good idea. And that's a public perspective. That's not a private perspective, but it'll give you information you'll get the nitty gritty.
Yep.
What organization is that again, Van?
A self-made one.
It's called AdFeds. It's the field experience directors. The feds, I think, is the field experience directors, but it's the people who are in the placement offices at the UNC system institutions. And they're the interface between the university and the schools. And so they're going to know there is probably, I would say it's the easiest group to talk to fast to understand what all the moving parts of this are. So when you're going back to talk to people like Patrick, and he's going to go talk to NCASA, it helps him with his talking points. Because I can tell you, our field and clinical people are far more likely to talk to an HR person than they are to me. And they're on the staff in the Watson College, but they're communicating with superintendents, HR personnel offices, and principals in this whole process.
I'm gonna get y'all some information. I sent a text.
I don't know who convenes the man. I think they just sort
I
of,
just asked I just asked my group who convenes them, but so we'll know, so we can give you all that information. And the other person that could probably convene them would be Laura
yeah.
Laura Hart.
Bilberberry.
Oh,
Laura
yeah.
Hart,
Oh,
too.
Laura. Yeah, got it.
She doesn't convene with them, probably Laura Bilberberry, but Laura Hart, obviously, I think Laura Hart, yeah, or Diana or Aaron Horn or.
Yeah. I just if you email Vivian, I email Cindy Wiseman. So we'll find out.
I texted the whole little group, see what they think. They have all the scoop. So I think there also needs to be, and maybe the ed feds are the ones plus the privates could push this out about the reality of ed TPA and that you can use a small group of students and that is allowed, because that's not how people think about that. They think about, 25 kids, right? Or, except for some situations. So I'm wondering if we could do a Mythbuster kind of email about that. And maybe
Can you if you can take the leadership on the Ed TPA? I just teed up a conversation with Jen Olson over at Meredith, and
okay.
I'll try and spearhead a one pager around the PPAT. And to me, it seems like what you just said, the dispelling the myths and making sure that people are not turning it into a monster it isn't, but really identifying where the problem spots are might be the most important, most immediate thing we could do.
Yeah. Okay. I'll see what they have too already dispelled.
Yeah, and check our website, because Kim just posted that on the FAQ side of our website, what they've offered to date.
And I can send you that link. I'll just email it to you.
Are you talking about through Kelly?
Hmm?
Are you saying? Okay, go ahead. Never mind.
Cindy Wiseman at UNCW does the logistics on convening Ed Fed.
Oh, there you go.
So I just asked her, do you ever do impromptu meetings?
I just got a note that said Cindy Wiseman at UNCW convenes at.
She'll be at happy hour right now, so she likes to knock off between 11 and 1. I don't think the woman's ever knocked off in her career.
I'm sure you could get them on the phone, like,
Yeah.
you. I mean, probably tomorrow, to be honest.
You don't even have to get them all. You have to get enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it sounds like if we start to shape sort of a battle plan here, it sounds like some white papers dispelling myths is an immediate first step. It sounds like talking with this group of folks that are the bridge is another important step. Is there virtue, Tom? I'm thinking about you and I, Tom. Is there virtue in talking with Bev about teeing up any information that we can share with the refs or with some of the regional folks about the impending challenges and some talking points on that front as well?
I mean, I'm hesitant to start involving the refs in this because, I'm not fully sure what they're more compliance focused with the beginning teacher support program, and this is a little different. This isn't beginning teacher support necessarily.
But it could be for those that left the EPP.
Yeah,
Right.
so in the case of the residency model, I think there's clearly a connection here. So these folks are going out, especially if they're distant from their graduating institution, then there's some problems with, you know, supporting them the way that it's intended under the residency model. And I could see that being part of the beginning teacher support oversight. I'm just hesitant to promise any support from a group that I don't have,
Sure. No, I meant the first conversation be more fact finding than we're actually going to get them to do something. I just see that they are particularly like you said on the residency side, they're right in there in the trenches. So
Andrew, who was the group you mentioned? I missed the first part.
the regional education facilitators, we call them refs. They're a portion of the regional teams, and they're sort of responsible for beginning teacher preparation from year 1 to year 3. You can think of them as like sort of helping beginning teachers to the point of CPL licensure level. And so when you think about folks who attempted the test but didn't pass it and then went on to take a job, or you look at residency folks who are already out in the field, having a clear understanding of EdTPA and PPAT in their mind and how to support is going to be important for effectively all residency folks and any of those folks that didn't end up passing out of the gate.
So it looks like,
anything?
oh, go ahead, Ann.
I just asked if we're missing anything, like any component of this that we're.
I think we need to have some K-12 folks here to know if we're missing something on their side.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Can you do the same this meeting with the PEPSC K-12 folks?
So we do have Chris Blanton who volunteered to be on this, but he couldn't be on this particular meeting.
Right.
I did put a hold for October 1st. So I think he could make it to that one, but also if we wanted Maureen to try to make that meeting and any of her regional teachers, or if she came with the perspectives of her regional teachers, along with maybe Chris, if he's able to make it. I need to look back at the doodle poll to see if he was one of the 3 or 4 that could make it.
Yeah.
But I have that as a standing meeting right now. I'm just waiting for confirmation of the state board room for live streaming purposes. But at this point, do we feel like we need that meeting? I'm pretty positive, correct?
Yeah, I think with the October 1, we could look at maybe what Ann's put together, what I've put together, and
Okay.
a couple of these initial steps.
And some K-12 perspective, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this has been very productive.
And what groups are we PRing any groups at this point?
What? Are we doing what?
PRing. Are we sending out any information to any groups?
Oh,
It seems to me that the development of those 2 one-pagers was probably be the beginning of PR. I think.
Yeah, and I know we gotta deal with the challenge that's right in front of us. But can we promise we're not going to lose that long-term discussion? We can pinky
You have
swear,
a long memory.
yeah, pinky swear or whatever. But you
Yeah,
know,
Kim never forgets. So, and she's got it in her notes here. So I feel pretty confident that she will be beating us up in a couple of weeks, if not months, about it. Right, Kim?
Right.
I think yeah. Good. Okay, so Kim, we'll just hear from you. I'll come up with a draft or I'll see what they have out there that I can pull into maybe another format that pulls that out. Because it's also the virtual learning guidelines, I think that are also really important for EdTPA.
I'm going to definitely send you the link from the DPI website, Ann.
Okay, that sounds fabulous.
And by the way, Ann, if you find that the documentation we have on that website, that there are additional resources that you're aware of that we're not aware of, send it to us and we'll hang those up there as well.
Okie dokie.
We're trying to stay ahead of that, but you know, it's possible that we might have missed one along the way.
Did you get them from Kelly?
Yeah, I think we get them. Yes, Kelly with the IE. Yes.
Kelly with
Yes.
the IE.
Yeah.
hey, we're on a roll. You want us to take on anything else and something big going on, Raleigh? Plan A. I'd like to be in Plan A by 1:15.
Nice.
Well, we even have 5 minutes to spare. Does anybody else have anything to add? You know,
Oh, you told us we had 20 minutes left, 15 minutes ago. Okay.
Hey, I will share one thing about a PEPSC colleague. The Drive Task Force subcommittee that I'm on met with Teach for America last week to talk to them about some of the recruiting strategies they use. Andrew was outstanding.
Oh,
I
yeah?
heard he was.
Yeah, he was so good in that meeting.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard he was. Cheryl's on there with you, right, Van? Cheryl
Yeah.
Miller Dice.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Mhm. She said Andrew was great.
He did a fantastic job.
Oh, that's great.
I won't tell him that, but
I just said, why can't you bring this to the PEPSC meetings? Because there you're just an obstructionist.
exactly. Until Ron
and
agrees.
it's been recorded saying that. It's going to be public soon.
He
Teasing you, Andrew.
he is a great colleague for PEPSC and Drive, but he was outstanding.
Yeah,
Great.
I heard that. Good to hear. Go, Andrew. Okay, thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. And I will be in touch about October 1st to confirm that meeting.
Fabulous. Everybody
right.
have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, this
Thanks,
is
guys.
great.
He's-
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.